Hello and welcome to the second episode of Brain Spit. Today I have Mike Dong here with me, and my name is Youssef. And so I'll start off by asking you one question.
All right.
What do you define as success?
Success. I feel like success is a state where you can, like a state. How do I say this? You achieve success when you find happiness. I think, and happiness is varies for different individuals, right? So I guess similarly, success means different things for different individuals.
Because in English class we were reading this book called Fifth Business.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure if you're reading it as well.
Yep.
And in that book, like a bunch of different characters all achieve success. Almost none of them are happy. Very few of them are happy. I mean, by the end, one of the main character you can say is happy, but they're all pretty miserable throughout the story. And even though they all achieved success, their version of success is completely different.
Yeah.
Like one went into the business world and got financial success. Another went into writing and got spiritual kind of success. A third became a big magician. That's his success. So for you personally, what do you think success is? What do you think will make you happy?
I am, to be honest, not too sure. If I have to take a guess, probably be by the time I'm 40 years old, I have a house, a family, and just plain old life. Nothing too special, and just live it out from there.
So you just want like an ordinary, settled down kind of...
Yeah, of course. Like, I prefer to not live in poverty or, have like abusive relationships or anything of that sort. But like, like that would be. I feel like that would be success for me.
I mean, like I like to say that to a lot of people, money isn't everything.
Yeah.
But a quote I heard recently is that not having money is everything. Because if you don't have money, your whole life revolves around, how am I going to pay this off? How am I going to get through the week? How am I going to make to the end of the month? And you can't really plan for anything else.
Yeah, I guess that's the society kind of revolves around money these days anyways. But
I mean, I think it always did.
Yeah.
No matter when you were a human, for most of civilization, unless you're
like now... Like today's society, people are much more reliant on money. So let's say a farmer in the 1930s, unless they wish to like purchase some sort of new equipment or something, they can basically live off their land or...
Well, yeah, but like in that time, basically, food was the currency. That was the money.
So I guess you can say that.
Yeah. So like while they might have not been looking for the currency, they still wanted some worth, some valuable asset.
Yeah, I guess.
Whether it's food or land or...
Yeah, I guess like money is a way for people to kind of to interact with each other, right? And as society is becoming more and more of a society, I guess, like just a lot more people who have to deal with money is becoming much more prevalent. And I'm speaking of this like talking about how society developed, not necessarily as to today's society.
Yeah, I mean, I think because of how society developed, money had to be, like, valuable goods had to be abstracted, which is why people are now saying, I don't want my life just to be revolving around money and whatever.
Yeah.
Because back in the olden days, you didn't see it as just money or whatever. They saw it as food. And you're like, of course I need to work for food. Of course I need to work for, like, building a house. Of course I need fuel for the fires to keep my house warm. Of course I need hay for the cattle, so on and so forth. And because of this abstraction, I think more and more people are kind of losing sight of society or like feeling more isolated. I mean, there's multiple factors as with anything, but I think the abstraction of what you're working towards, being a small gear in like a big machine.
Yep.
That really, to a lot of people, causes them to kind of lose hope and go into despair.
Yeah, I guess that's like, I feel like that's a key part. As like a lot of people nowadays, like there's the whole argument of over should you chase your dream and try to make a living based off of that.
Yeah.
Like, like that's, and if you, I remember last year in English class there was the two girls. One of them talked about how you should chase your dream and try to build your life around your dream.
Yeah.
While the other one was talking about how you should make a living and chase your dream with the money that you earn from your job. And I feel like I personally am definitely on the chase your dream and try to make your living around, like, evolving around your dream type of person. Because if you're gonna be miserable, like, why bother living at all?
Yeah.
You know, like, life is supposed, like, I think that you should try to enjoy your life, at least, like,
Yeah.
enjoy as much of it as possible. And the things, it's the classic saying, and we discussed earlier, like, money does not equal happiness, right?
Yeah.
And in that case, the other side of the argument that with money you can chase your dream with the money.
Yeah.
I feel like that's not a very valid argument, and I'm definitely going to try to chase my dreams. And
Well, that's good.
yeah,
I mean, many people do say chase your dreams and such. The problem is that I see is that a lot of people don't try to chase their dreams, and they end up miserable because they just settle on anything.
yeah.
And then the flip side of that is that people who sometimes do try to follow their dreams, and then spend like years working towards it.
Yeah.
Dreams change. So after like a certain amount of time, say you wanted to become a actor, and then even if you find some success in acting, you say you no longer want to be an actor.
Yeah.
Then basing your whole ideology, your whole self-image based on your one dream, that becomes a little problematic.
Well, I suppose that's, like, with the actor example that you mentioned, I feel like that person's more they're a bit too rash in that case. I would think that if you were to chase your dream, this dream should be something that's, like, deeply important to you. And in many cases, like dreams that are, like, a part of you, they don't, like, I don't think they would change a lot as you grow up. Like, yes, I know, like, I personally really want to do something that's associated with aviation when I grow up. I had that dream, like, I guess I had this dream since I was, like, 5 years old.
Yeah.
And as I grew up, it started to evolve, but in its most fundamental, like, form, it's still remains the same. I still want to do something that has to do with airplanes. And
Yeah.
and, like, with the actor's case, I think that's, like, more people, they're, like, taking an interest in acting, and it's not really their dream, I feel. And, like, this is what's dangerous about the whole chasing your dream thing. Like, you have to make sure that you want to do this for the rest of your life, or, like, if you're acting on impulse, then you kind of screw yourself over. Like,
Yeah, I
big
mean,
time.
even if they right this moment say, yes, I'm gonna work my entire life as an actor, or even work in aviation or car mechanic or any of the different fields, regardless of what it is, and then at this moment they thought it through, they spent the last few years thinking it through, they might still change their mind even after some time, especially since when you're working on something as a hobby, as for fun, for your own enjoyment, it's a lot different than working on it as a job.
Yeah, I guess.
Because there's a lot of aspects of a job, even in a field that you're interested in, that are not necessarily what you're interested about.
Yeah.
A lot of paperwork, a lot of meetings, a lot of planning, a lot of things that you might not enjoy doing in any profession. So that sometimes people are now saying you should find a job you enjoy and then work on your hobbies. So having a meaningful hobby to work on the side. You shouldn't necessarily turn your hobby into a job.
Well, I don't know, because, like, if you think about it, you have 24 hours in a day. You work, let's say, 8 hours a day, and sleep for another 8, and so you're spending 8 hours a day doing something that I don't know, let's just say it's in a best case scenario, like, you don't particularly like it, but you
Yeah.
don't hate it either. You sleep for 8 hours, and in the remaining 8 hours, you find some time, maybe an hour or two, to kind of like work on your hobby and interest.
Yeah.
And I feel that's kind of like a bad use of time. Like personally, in my opinion, like if it was me, I would probably try to switch it up so it's 8 hours. When I like 8 hours working, I'll try to find some sort of job that interests me so that I can enjoy like working and making like the process of making money, and the rest of the 8 hours I can dedicate that to my family or loved ones.
I mean, I also I'm on the same boat as you are. I think I found my passion.
Yeah.
I've been working on it for a long time, but I think it's still important to not just base your self image on what you do, because if all you're focused about is, in your case, aviation, for 8 hours a day, and then you go home and then just like work on aviation or whatever, um, if say something bad happens in your job, or you say you're working on a big project that isn't going too well,
Yeah.
for outside reasons, nothing you necessarily had to do with,
Yeah.
you're gonna feel that burden on yourself. You're gonna feel burnt out. If your project isn't going well, you feel like you're not doing well. So basing your entire self image on like one thing is very dangerous. I think it's a lot better to, yes, work on something you truly enjoy, but then also have a meaningful hobby, or have more aspects to you as a person that you can fall back on if one thing doesn't work. Diversifying what
Yeah,
you're
like
working on.
I agree with you, but like what I meant by like what's the spending time with your family and loved ones as well as I think like it's definitely a good idea to using that spare time to try to branch out and discover other things that you're interested in. So like in case, as you said,
Yeah.
things don't work out, you feel burnt out at the job, you can like you just like kind of fall back onto some of your other developed interests and kind of try them out a bit. And yeah, I don't know. I haven't really thought about this that much, but like, cause with me, it's always about aviation. I have never for like one moment in my life since I was like 5, where when I wasn't interested in planes or any aspect of a plane. Like,
I mean,
so
same with me on programming.
Yeah.
Ever since I was a kid, that's been, well, not necessarily programming, but something to do with computers.
Yeah.
And like throughout the years, I've settled on programming. I've worked on it. So that's what you define as success.
yes, finding happiness.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'd like to ask you more about your interest in aviation. Why did that start? Why do you think?
I was writing an essay on this just last night. I was applying to a scholarship, but yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want to hear like why I got interested, or just how it developed?
Yeah, the whole thing.
All right. Well, the story begins on a very sunny day in Beijing, almost 13 years ago. Yeah. It was. If you know Beijing, you know like all the smog and stuff, right? But I think back then it was smog and pollution was still like a much smaller problem. And when I was 5, it was. I remember that day like it was very very clearly. It was a very clear day, and I was kind of just taking a stroll through my neighborhood, and I looked up and I saw the contrails of a bunch of planes. It probably was some sort of Chinese Air Force stuff, because there was a bunch of planes and flying in formation. And really at that moment, I just had a moment to think, and I was like, wow, that looks like they looked like they're, I don't know how to say this. It's like,
You're in like awe of the spectacle.
well, not exactly like imagine sitting in the cockpit of a plane flying. Like
Yeah.
I'm more like interested in the freedom that the plane can bring you, because you haven't like a totally another
Dimension.
dimension of freedom. Like yeah, sure, you're on land, you can walk forward or to the side, but when you're flying, it's 3 dimensions. And I had that like I got the idea that with a plane you can go wherever you want, and to be honest, anywhere in the world there is restrictions. Like as I grew up, you kind of realize that you have to land at some point, so you need actually an airfield. But as a kid, that like I saw like airplanes were like the kind of the step towards the future, the next big thing, like the next big type of transportation. There were, and when I was a kid, like I read some, I guess, children's science magazines, and there was an article that mentioned like flying car, plane hybrid things of the future, and that really kind of hit me on. I was like, hey, this stuff's neat. This is cool. I kind of want to, I want to do this. I want to experience that freedom and perhaps make a big change to the world. Like, the whole thing about kids wanting to be scientists.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like that's how it really started, and over the years the interest turned into a hobby, passion, whatever.
So it's interesting that you say that you were inspired to become or do something with aviation because you saw planes as something that gives you a lot of freedom.
Yes.
And a lot of people see cars the same way. They want their first car because, I can go anywhere with a car.
Yeah.
Of course, like restrictions on roads and stuff. And then it's weird that in reality, if you're flying as a pilot, almost all the routes you're going to take are predetermined. You can't really go on your own path too much.
Yes, I understand that, and like I don't necessarily want to be a pilot. Like definitely flying is fun.
Yeah.
Like I have done a bit of flying, taken a couple. I don't know what you call it, but like essentially you have like a certified pilot.
Flight lessons?
Yes, and he lets you take control of the plane. And essentially, I feel like it's the ability to, you can go wherever you want. That's really appealing to me, and that's why like being a pilot, it's not it's not super interesting to me because you take away the one aspect of flying that's like super appealing to me, right?
Yeah. So what part of aviation do you want to pursue?
I kind of I'm now like becoming more and more interested in the designing and manufacturing of aircrafts. Like when I was younger, I watched a couple of documentaries on like how they build, like how the Airbus and the companies like build their planes and how the designing process work and all, and that it really intrigued me because it works very similar to like what you expect on like a assembly line, except it's a lot bigger and goes at a much slower pace because they are aircrafts.
Yeah.
And I either want to design, like I either want to contribute to the manufacturing process by, I don't know, making the plane more easier to assemble, like through design. Like I don't really want to like be a assembly line worker, for example, like to actually build the aircraft.
You want to design the aircraft?
Yes. So either designing the plane to give it better flight characteristics, or like trying to make like aircrafts more prevalent by making the manufacturing process easier and such. There's lots of aspects of aviation that I'm interested in, and usually they just come down to the whole designing thing. And
yeah, I'm also definitely super interested in like automating anything and optimization.
Yeah.
Because the way we're seeing robots taking over more and more things, more jobs, it's a lot of the lower level jobs, the retail worker, the cashier. And McDonald's, they're replaced by just the screens that you can order food from. And that's why I've been seeing, because I've saw how much we can automate, I want to see how much more we can automate.
Yeah.
I look at anything a human does, I'm like, that should be automated. Or like for the most part, anything manual is for the most part should be automated. Even a lot of the clerical work we do, bookkeeping, the looking at data, like storing data, all that jazz, I think that should be automated as much as possible. Is that what you're trying to get at when you're saying You wanna
I
improve
like why is
aviation?
why I say like I want to improve aviation. I don't really. I didn't really think about the whole automation thing in the aviation industry because, well, like, because there was a whole debacle with like autopilot versus human pilot thing, and I'm like totally for having human pilots, but like why I mentioned like making the manufacturing process for aircrafts like faster. I was like meaning making components simpler and much easier to put together. And I think like if you are to like mass produce aircrafts by automation, that would like take away like I think it'll make it just more unsafe because like with an aircraft, if there's like a single point in like let's say one thing on like a passenger jet when you're assembling it.
Yeah.
During the assembling process, the machine does not detect, let's say, one of the screws is loose or something like that,
Yeah.
which a worker will discover when he puts it on because he'll do it by hand. With the machine, if there's some sort of trouble, that one loose screw can just cause the whole plane to burn. Like, I don't know, a wing might fall off during takeoff or stuff like that. You know, like tragedies like the couple of weeks back, the Boeing that crashed after takeoff, stuff like that. That's partially because of automation and because of the whole debate. Like one small mistake in the construction of the aircraft can cause an entire plane full of people.
Yeah.
To just, and they're gone.
Yeah, I think safety is a big thing.
Yeah.
I mean, airplanes are deemed to be the safest mode of transportation.
Yes, but
regardless of the incidents.
Yeah.
But there's always room to improve. There's always room to make them safer.
Yeah.
So you're when you say you want to make aircrafts better, you're thinking of more like the end product rather than the process.
Sorry, I don't quite understand. What do you mean
And so you want the planes to be better rather than making the process either faster or cheaper or better.
Well, I want to achieve both. Like either make it safer as well as make the manufacturing process faster. But I don't think the manufacturing process necessarily need to be automated for it to be faster.
Yeah, I mean I was kind of surprised when he said that you're more in favor of human pilots rather than software pilots on planes.
Yeah.
Because to me, I think that computers can do things so much more perfectly every time and reliably. Of course, like learning wise, it's gonna take some time to learn. But then they have all the knowledge of everyone who flew before, and every time they fly on any plane, they learn from that. They always learn. It's rather than having to retrain a person over and over again, or like many people over and over again to get new pilots. You always have the best pilot in the world at your fingertips every single time.
Like,
I see your point from having like the pilot's freedom if you're flying the plane.
Like the thing is, you don't really understand. Like a robot, it can't feel what the plane wants to do. Like sure, there are instruments that that the AI can perhaps get readings from, but like there's a certain aspect like the things. If you're a pilot, like right now, like when the plane after the plane takes off, the pilot switches on autopilot, and the plane just kind of cruises to its destination without any human intervention.
Yeah.
But the thing is, the landing and takeoff that are very, very dangerous, and you kind of have to have a feel for it, and it's a part of like human intuition. I feel like I don't think that's the right word. It's like almost instinct. Yeah, a gut instinct, and I really can't see how robots or AIs can replicate this. Like, if your plane is flying, actually right after takeoff, and it's near stalling. I mean, like, what do you?
Yeah, like I mean, the gut instinct part is the part I have a problem with in humans because not everyone's gut instinct is correct. Especially not all the time. Like they can sense maybe something is wrong, but then the way they go about fixing it might be contrary to everything they learn, because sometimes people panic. Pilots, it's way less of an issue because it happens way less. But I'm just talking like general situation, and like for me, a lot of my gut instincts on how high something is, how far something is, where the middle of like wall is, are so wrong, like all the time.
I I think you misunderstood me, or I just didn't communicate it
Yeah.
correctly. It's when I say gut instinct, I'm not sure how to explain this, but like when you fly a plane, it's kind of through the controls you can feel what the plane
Yeah.
wants to do. It's
And
almost like you know like if you're riding a horse, the horse will have its like the horse when you're trying to like get the horse to go through a wall, the horse will be like,
Yeah.
no, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
And like you can kind of like learn of that because of the behavior of your vehicle, right?
Yeah.
I feel like it's a very similar thing with planes, except that it's not a sentient being, right?
Yeah.
Like through the controls, maybe resistance in certain maneuvers and
Yeah.
such, you can get an idea of like whether the plane will respond well to a certain maneuver. And
Yeah.
the thing is, I feel like that is something that like AIs and robots cannot account for. Sure, the instruments and the airspeed, different different airspeed instruments might give an AI a very comprehensive like idea of what the plane is, like what the current state is. But
Yeah.
like,
I mean, all the things you're saying, say if the plane vibrates, if the controls have resistance, I think that's all things that the AI can actually, if we put the instruments in place, the AI can recognize and actually detect better than many humans can. Because we know that the scale of measuring something in robot can do or machines can do are so much better, like infinitesimally better than what humans can do. It can sense the smallest vibration, it can sense the smallest piece of resistance, and can do all the calculations necessary to see what's the best outcome. How, in every sense of, in everything it tries to do, what's the best way to get out of the situation, or what's the best way to get to the situation quickest, to get to the situation the fastest, to get to to wherever you want to go, more comfortably to all the passengers than you normally would, to avoid turbulence. I think that's things that, as people working on the robots get better and better at making, you'll see a lot more adoption. I think the reason it hasn't been adopted yet is because of how risky it is at the start. Because in order to get a robot to do a lot as good as it can be, as better than a human, it needs a lot of practice, as a human would. And then like any mistake a robot would do would be so costly, and then instantly stops all progress, basically.
I see what you are talking about, and like I agree that what you talk about, how the robot would definitely be more accurate and such. But the
Yeah.
thing is, you have to like with the instinct thing. If it's a robot and you're teaching it, if there's any like mistake in its teaching in its code, or like what happened at with the Boeing plane a couple weeks back, if anything like this happens, a human will instinctively know what to do because it will want to get away from danger. And if it's familiar with the plane, he'll know what maneuver to pull.
Yeah.
The robot doesn't know, like doesn't have this instinct. And like with what happened with the Boeing, the plane, like the AI kept trying to pull the nose up, even though like it was like stalling. Wait, was it the other way? I forget. I think there was it was a stall situation. Essentially, the plane, it didn't have enough speed to keep on flying.
Yeah.
And the robot, I think it tried to correct that by dipping the nose down. But the things, it did not account for it did not account for how low the plane was to the ground, and it was not able to recover from the maneuver.
Yeah.
And the AI essentially plummeted the plane
Yeah.
into the ground. And I feel like this is like a human pilot would have acted very differently in this situation. He either would have made the made the made the dive really shallow angles. That way he doesn't plummet the plane to the ground, or just went for a more like, or he could have tried to belly land it or something of that sort. Maybe perhaps perhaps the pilot could not have recovered the plane, but he would have tried to save himself. It's just like survival instinct. You want to keep yourself alive, right?
Yeah.
And in that case scenario, if the pilot lives, basically everyone else in the plane is I'll give you like a 90 to 10 chance of a person surviving a crash landing. But like in the case of the robot, it was trying to protect the plane, so keep the plane as safe as possible. I suppose, like kind of protect company property.
I don't think it's necessarily about protecting company property. I think the AI is the pilot, and the pilot is the plane. It doesn't want to just protect the plane. It wants to protect the passengers. Now,
but it can't distinguish like the difference between protecting the plane and the passengers. Like
I would disagree. I would say that sure, in that scenario, the AI did the wrong thing. It did the wrong thing, and it cost lives. That's horrible. I think that's an error in the programming, the error in the teaching the AI, and that might have been the same thing if a different team of humans was piloting the plane. I still think that overall, more often than not, accidents can be avoided by having humans not take the wheel most of the time. Because there are scenarios like this where it happens, but then imagine if the different team of pilots were taking over, and they thought, oh, we need to nosedive or go faster, so they did what the AI would have done, and that's just because they're different people. Like, yes, they want to survive, but they think the way to survive is by making the plane go faster.
Yeah, I see what you. I understand where you're making the point, but
like hindsight is like 20/20. Of course, we know exactly how we could have prevented this, and then now things are being put in measure to make sure that does prevent more death from these kind of accidents. And like the same thing with self-driving cars. I think self-driving cars are going to save so many lives, and I can't wait for them to be implemented. But in order for them to save a lot of lives, they need to be thoroughly run through the ringer in terms of training them. That's why they haven't been implemented fully yet. Like Tesla has their cars running in semi-autopilot, where humans still has to take control every once in a while, and it's doing really well. Like you see a lot of videos on YouTube of Tesla cars avoiding an accident or detecting an accident that's going to happen ahead of them, and then avoiding it, saving the person's life.
I don't know. It's just I feel like during the teaching process, if you kind of overlook something or just completely not think of something, I would think that a human, like, what would happen? Let's say you teach it. Let's just talk about a car. Let's say there's a scenario where the car doesn't know how to react to. What would it do? Would it just stop?
Well, right now, what the car is doing is when it doesn't know how to react, it gives control back to the human. Tells him, okay, oh, there's something, error, beep, 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 just do something. Then the human has to go, oh, there's a deer on the road, beep.
What if there was no human behind the wheel? Like, what would you think that the AI would do?
Yeah, I mean, in that scenario, depending on danger, the AI would have to determine the safest bet of saving the people on board the car, if there's humans. If there are no humans on board, and there might be humans elsewhere, it will deem how would be the safest way to not harm any of the other humans, even if it means sacrificing the car itself.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of questions when it comes to self-driving cars on the ethics of it. Because if you have a human who's driving a car, and then they see a cat on the road or whatever, or even like a small child on the road, they're instinctually gonna drift away to try to not hit the person. And then even though that means they might die, uh, and that's just an instinct kind of thing that they're just reacting. They don't have time to think it over. But an AI does have time to think it over, essentially. So it's gonna have to be pre-programmed to say, oh, this person is jaywalking or something. He's in the middle of the road, and if I swerve, there's traffic all next to me. I can't stop because I'm gonna get hit rear-ended by the guy behind me. What does the car do? Or if it has to go either way, and like in a fork in the road, each way has different people. Which way does it go? And those are a lot of ethic things that people need to consider. And it's not one person programming these cars. It's a giant team of people who have to look it over and over and over again to make sure that they don't miss anything, essentially. And then and then a different team of people comes in to make sure that they didn't miss anything. And then they test it on like safe environments for many, many kilometers. And then they release a version that people can test while the humans are still in control. So that, imagine how many miles or how many kilometers of training the AI gets, because it's the same AI in all the cars. It's already past what any human can possibly drive in their lifetime.
Yeah, I guess.
I mean, and it's been improving. So the more self-driving cars there are, the safer the self-driving cars, because they have more data to take from, to see, to be able to use to judge different situations accurately. And it's those very, very rare instances that are going to be a problem. But then again, it saves way more lives way more often than the few times a human maybe would have done better. And that's still not a guarantee, because a human might just as well have just reacted and then done something wrong and still led to the same outcome. And I don't think there's been any cases of death based on from a self-driving car crashing, but there's numerous numbers of deaths from people not in self-driving cars dying, who were asleep at the front of the wheel, who just aren't paying attention, who are driving under the influence. It's the number of deaths are astronomical.
Yeah, I see that AI can greatly reduce that number, and I'm happy for that. But I'm uncomfortable at the idea that that AI will replace human on everything. It's the whole.
I don't think it's gonna replace humans on everything, but
yeah, like sure, like positions that require people to come up with ideas, like art and stuff like that. Like AI will probably won't be able to replace them until we design like a perfect copy or what. How do you say, like someone
sentient?
Yeah, sentient AI, like someone, unless we just like get something like that. But like still, it just makes me kind of uncomfortable to think that human society is becoming less and less human. You know.
I mean, it's the same as having a horse pull the cart for you when you're way to the market. You're sitting on the wagon. The horse knows the way. You just let the horse walk on the trail. You don't pay too much attention to it. It's doing its thing. I don't think it's the humans are being less human. They're just finding ways to make their lives easier. So, say truck driving. In order to be a truck driver, you have to work many hours sitting in a car driving. The conditions aren't good. You work very long hours. You have to like sleep in motels and like get food from less than desirable places, and then the pay isn't as good as other jobs, but people have to do it to survive. And then if AI takes over, people can't work as truck drivers anymore. So those people lose their jobs. But then the next generation of people who would have been truck drivers don't become truck drivers anymore. They go into something else. You diverge. They go do something else, which would be overall, I would say, better for the people, even though in the long term they might lose their job. And I think there should be ways to mitigate when people lose their jobs from AI, to help them out, to help re-educate them, to give them some security so that they don't have to worry about, like, coming back to the start of the podcast when we're saying money isn't everything, but not having it is.
Yeah.
Making sure that their basic needs, I think that everyone's basic needs should be covered for the most part. So food, water, and some basic shelter.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be a nice house, literally any shelter with a bed, and then some nutrition and sustenance so that they can be able to recoup their losses, to be able to move forward.
Yeah, I guess, but I don't know, like, if you're gonna replace everything with AI, I was thinking, and we'll end up with a bunch of people that are jobless, and like, I guess what AI is, like, what society is moving to is like a stage where humans can just enjoy living completely.
Yeah.
And like, all AI would do everything for us. Am I correct?
Well, I mean, I definitely don't think that AI is going to be doing absolutely everything for us.
Yeah.
But if you need someone to clean your house, it's probably going to be a robot.
Yeah.
If you need someone to drive you somewhere, it's going to be a robot. If you need someone to do your gardening, it's going to probably be a robot. If you need someone to do your accounting, it's probably going to be a robot.
Yeah. Yeah, but like, all these jobs that you're replacing, you displace the people, and
Yeah.
let's say if the people and their children are not able to get into like higher position jobs, so
Yeah.
let's say engineers, designers, artists, and whatnot.
Yeah.
What would they do? They will have no purpose in life almost, other
Yeah.
than to live and reproduce and keep
Yeah.
the human race
And
going.
I definitely think that other jobs are going to pop up in ways we can't even imagine. Think of YouTube. How many people have a full-time job working on YouTube now? Something that no one could have ever imagined being a thing. Even like it's close to 7 years ago. When YouTube was still, or not 7 years ago, closer to 10 years ago at this point.
Yeah.
But like, look at how large of a community that is. And it's amazing to me that all these jobs are basically free for the consumer. That the consumer doesn't have to pay anything to support all these people. Because they're a base of advertisements. And that seems to be working great. There's a lot of people who lead more fulfilling lives because of YouTube, being a YouTuber.
Yeah, I understand that, but like
I do understand the concern that you feel that there's going to be less jobs than there are people, and then there are going to be people who are displaced and don't have any real goal in life.
Yeah, but
they can't
like,
find success.
Like the jobs, you're gonna say the new jobs are gonna pop up, but
Yeah.
wouldn't they become more and more complex? So like they'll be building on like servicing the AIs and robots and such.
Yeah.
But the thing, we do have, like, there's always gonna be people that won't be able to do those jobs.
Yeah.
And like the things, as society continue to progress, like the complexity of the jobs that pop up and like or get replaced will keep on getting higher, higher and higher, more difficult to like maintain, requiring higher
education,
higher education,
training, more
yeah,
knowledge.
exactly. And the thing is, in the end, you're gonna be gonna give the jobs to a smaller and smaller like percentage of the population, and I just feel like we'll then be kind of like we're going to be creating a sort of autocracy. I think that's the right word, right?
Yeah.
And like it's a pretty relevant, like if your parents come from like more educated like if you come from a well educated family, you're much more likely to become like well educated and successful yourself, right? Like this is basically not up to debate. Sure, like you may come from a not very well educated family and still go to like Harvard or MIT.
Yeah.
But like the chances are much lower.
Yeah, and I akin to it. I saw an example of this being, say, imagine you have a classroom.
Yeah.
And then you have a trash can at the very front.
Yeah.
You give everyone a piece of paper, and they're supposed to throw it into the trash can. Whoever gets it into the trash can wins.
Yeah.
The people at the back of the room are still able to get it in, but it's way harder for them to get it in than the people at the front.
Yeah.
So even though some people at the front don't make it, a lot more of the people at the back don't make it.
Yeah.
Unless you're really good at throwing cans in a trash can.
Yeah, and like this is what I mean with like the autocracy, right? Like it was just the people that the rich get richer and the poor gets even more poor, and like you create this like divide with like the people that has jobs and the people that don't, and
I mean, I don't see a way of stopping AI though. I don't see a way of saying, hey companies, or hey companies, you know how you could be doing things way more efficiently for way cheaper? Yeah, don't do that. No, you can't do that. You have to hire people. You have to get people to do it, because then somewhere else they're just gonna do it anyways. They're just gonna go do it somewhere else, and I don't have an answer to it. But what I would say is, like I said before, the basic necessities to be covered, so that people can still try to find a more fulfilling life, and and education should probably be, at least for lower levels, which like it is right now, to be provided. And then I think we're gonna find like disenfranchised a lot of people feeling that they don't need to go into education. They can spend their time drawing. They can spend their time creating puzzles or doing other things that brings them enjoyment and can bring them value as well. Because I don't want that everyone's value to be tied to how much money they can make. Because although having a job is good, having a value as an individual is a lot better. Think of like the senior citizens we have here. Although most of them are probably retired, they still have an income. The ones who are doing the best are the ones who are reaching out to the community, who are giving back, who are working with others, who are socializing, who are exercising, who are living out the best life they can live, without really needing a job to be satisfied. They just need human connection and things that they enjoy doing and they're passionate about. And to the thing about having the rich get richer and the poor get poorer, the way I see it, that's gonna happen, and I would like to mitigate that as much as possible. But throughout history, right now, I would say it's probably the best time to be your standard of living as a poor person is probably a lot higher than someone 50 years ago, 100 years ago, 200 years ago. The standard of living is going up overall, which I think is fantastic.
Yeah, I agree with you.
So what do you see as the best outcome here?
I think the outlook is actually very grim. I'm glad that I'm alive now and not 50 years in the future or 50 years in the past. Now's the time to be alive.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think the transition period is going to be the hardest, but I think we're going to make it out of it all right. I don't like keeping a pessimistic point of view or feeling grim or worried about something that could happen that's completely out of my control. There's not much I can do to prevent it. So I think we need to accept it and try to solve the problems that arise before they arise. Because we can see a lot of the problems that might happen with AI taking hold or just automation in general. But then there's also a plethora of things that we can't see that we're going to have to solve later on. I think if you have the mindset that you're supposed to find answers, find solutions, rather than just looking for problems and saying the outlook looks grim, I think that's a much better way of living.
Oh no, I'm not really the glass is half full kind of person, but yeah, I agree with you. We should try to solve our problems. You know, it's just I really don't like the aspect of having. I feel like that in the end, we humans will become weaker and weaker as a species, and that's how we're gonna go out in the end. You know, like we're kind of engineering our own destruction, and like on the surface, it seems like that we're kind of like making our lives better and society easier. Everyone's living standards going up. You can just play, enjoy, and live life to its fullest to your desire. But the thing is, we're just we're wasting our time. And in the end, if something does happen that, let's say, all AIs stop working, I don't know, or something like that, our society would just completely collapse. And like I feel like something like that really might happen. And there, human society just like that gone, because we don't have the things that we built our society upon now. Like right now, human society is built upon like a lot of people doing different parts, and unless all these people all of a sudden die, human society and humans as a species will continue to go on. But in the future, what if, I don't know, like, I know this sounds ridiculous, but something like the Terminator, or like a sentient AI that feels like, hey, I want to be the master of my own destiny. I don't want to serve these pesky, inferior biological beings anymore. Like even if there's no like war with AI, instead he'll be just like, screw you all. Like, we're just gonna go somewhere else and be our own species. Now, what do we do? What do we do then? We don't have like, if we're like depending so much on something and suddenly that thing gets taken away, it's just, what do we do then?
Yeah, I mean, it is a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
Bright side, while a lot of people are getting more out of shape, they're becoming more unhealthy as time goes on, a larger percentage of the population. Also, a larger percentage of the population is getting smarter. Overall, year over year, the average IQ of a person is going up and up. They actually have to adjust the IQ test so that the average IQ is like 100, and they keep having to make it harder and harder. So like in 100 years, the dumbest person alive might be smarter than, or not 100 years, like in like a couple 100 years, this dumbest person or like a dumb person might be considered an absolute genius right now or 50 years ago, and so on. So I think if there was no war with AI and we're left without AI or without the automation, I think we can crawl back into building a civilization, just because there are a lot of people who would be able to think of ways to make their lives better again, and they would have all the knowledge of knowing what is even possible. Because when you're trying to invent something absolutely new, you don't know if it's possible or not. If people said before the atomic bomb was created and before nuclear fusion was discovered, people said that's impossible. We can never get energy out of an atomic out of taking out atomic elements. We can never make a bomb out of it. That's all pure science fiction. That would never ever happen in the future of humanity. Then it happened, and then computers that were huge became smaller and smaller and smaller, and then are now every person, no matter what, if they're poor or rich, they all have some sort of computer.
We'll cross that road when we get there, right? You're trying to get that at that, right?
Yeah.
And I suppose that's what we kind of always end up doing.
Yeah.
Like as humanity, I feel like it's very difficult to predict what the future holds for us as a species, but
Yeah.
we'll probably everything has to die at some point, so it doesn't really matter if we in the end our species goes extinct or it continues on.
I mean, I don't think it's gonna necessarily happen in our lifetimes.
Yeah, of course, there's nowadays unless one of the leaders of a nuclear superpower suddenly goes crazy and somehow gets to press the red button, I don't think our society is going to our society at the time period that we're living now. I don't see a way that society can end. Sure, if you turn off the internet, some people might some teenager whose entire self-worth is based on of their Instagram likes or followers might jump off a building here and there, but it's honestly, gonna go on. But
I think less people would be committing suicide if there's no internet.
Well, it's the whole thing with if you heat something up and then dunk it immediately in cold water, there's if it's like an eggshell or something like that, it's gonna crack, right?
Yeah.
It's the same thing. After the internet goes dark, and for those eggshells that don't crack, when you go through the hot to cold step, they'll be fine. But the thing is, it's those people that when you dunk them in cold water, they crack and just it's those people that actually, what am I talking about? Feels bad, man. I kind of confused myself there a bit.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, it is funny how the things we are creating are for not all of them, of course. Some of them are helping us out a lot, but a lot of the things we are creating are actually causing us to be addicted to them, causing us to negative side effects in many different ways. So social media, even if you're not a heavy user of social media, you're still gonna lose some productivity. I ended up having to delete Reddit and I mean, I never really had any other social media things, but Reddit and stuff, because I was going on it too much. I was losing productivity to just looking at random facts of information on the internet.
Yeah, Reddit was created with a good intention. It's just
I know, and Reddit's super helpful for certain things.
Yeah, exactly, and I feel everything is use at your own risk kind of thing, right? Even if you you buy a fork, you can feed yourself with that, and or you can accidentally stab yourself and kill yourself with a fork. Everything has that property, but it's just that now that we're trying to get more and more, I guess, we're creating things with more and more complex functionalities. There's a higher chance that it's able to backfire on us. You create something very, very simple, like a matchstick. It lights on fire, and that's it.
Can burn a house, but can also
the thing, if you want to burn a house, that's what happens. But the thing is, a matchstick, how do you hurt yourself with a matchstick? Directly with a matchstick, unless you poke unless you poke something, poke your eye or something with a matchstick. Just how else do you do that? But now it's I don't know. What's a new discovery nowadays?
I don't know if there's anything super big that's happening nowadays being discovered.
Yeah, I don't.
I mean, I'm sure there are many things being discovered all the time.
Yeah.
I just haven't heard of anything.
Yeah, let's just take the example of a cell phone, right?
Yeah.
Cell phone, it's super useful and all, but the thing is, also, people are, because it's super useful, people are dedicating more and more time to it.
Yeah.
And forgetting to live in the real world, right? And I don't know, actually, wasn't there like what? Didn't it get debunked that cell phone causes cancer or something?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that got debunked. I mean, there's a lot of people like I always was told that like, oh, this is gonna give you cancer. This is gonna give you cancer.
Yeah.
And like, sure, there might be a small chance, but it's usually very marginal. Like something like uranium is gonna for sure give you cancer probably.
Yeah.
But like most of the things we have now are not gonna increase your chance of cancer by too much, other than like cigarettes.
Yeah, like yeah, so like with the cigarette and or coffee, anything with caffeine or like drugs and like that, you know, like they can either like coffee, you drink it, you become much more you can become more productive on less sleep. Yeah, but the side effects, it can be, you can become addicted to it and like depend on it. Same thing with drugs, everything. It's always double edged. Like there's literally nothing that can like stop us as humans from like hurting ourselves with, you know?
Yeah. I think because things are getting easier.
Yeah.
Before you had to work a lot harder to get to it where we are right now. It would be almost impossible for even the richest of rich people to have the comforts of most people have today.
Yeah.
Here in any developed countries, anyways.
Yeah.
And then, but look back in 100 years ago, or longer, you couldn't just sit around all day, unless you were actually the richest of rich people or like incredibly rich people. You couldn't sit around all day. Even if you're a rich person, most of their time was, oh, I'm gonna go hunting. I'm gonna go to this party with other rich people. It's you weren't as isolated as you are right now. You also weren't as connected as you are right now, which is kind of ironic.
Yeah, I suppose it's like really depending on what you mean by connected or isolated, like like physically or over the internet and electronically, right? Like they're saying that you're isolated physically, but also connected, like via the internet and all. But it's this world is so complex nowadays, man. I don't really know how to think about this. We humans kind of made a big mess of ourselves, but at the same time, everything's also kind of better. Yeah. You know.
It's weird that you because of how new everything is. Yeah. You have all these new problems, but because of all these new solutions, like every solution gives you a side effect basically. And I think overall everything is better, but you also have a lot of things that might not be as good. And for the most part, I think that's something society has accepted, that they try to mitigate the new problems, but they accepted that that's the price of progress basically. Everything, if you want to spend more time exercising, something else you have to do less of something else in your day. Yeah. Usually for most people that's less of watching TV or like sitting around, but nonetheless you have to do something else for a smaller period of time. Everything's a trade-off. Yeah. And I mean, I think there will come a day, hopefully, where overall there are way less side effects and things are much better. And in terms of connecting people, I think that in the next 10 or 20 years, people will be more connected, will be able to socialize a lot more with each other. Because it's bad right now, but I think what gives me hope is the advancements in virtual reality, which is counterintuitive because you think, oh, that's even more disconnected from the world. But then that's actually you personally being there next to someone else. You're almost takes away all being anonymous altogether, and you can see how the person reacts. You can see the other human beings in the same room with you in virtual reality anywhere across the world in any different time period. But in real life, you're still in the same place. Yeah, I think that's gonna be a big thing.
Yeah, I guess, but like, if that's what happens, then I feel like real life, the physical life will become
Yeah.
more and more out of fashion, kind of.
Yeah.
It's less desirable. It's much more harsh in virtual reality. You can meet whoever you want, be whoever you want. And,
Yeah.
it's like the same thing as a movie from I think last year.
Ready Player One.
Yeah, like people are literally living on piles of garbage and living their fantasy lives, and
Yeah.
I like that's the kind of future that I really don't want to see.
Yeah.
Like just thinking about it makes me very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I really hope that there's either we humans see that virtual realities can become something like that, or that just virtual reality doesn't get to that point. I like that, like virtual reality on the level of like Ready Player One. I feel like that's just plain harmful.
I mean, like in Ready Player One, while there were people living on garbage or whatever, there were also when they went, like one scene, they went in the city. I haven't read the book, so I don't know. I just off the movie. They went into like the actual city, and there's everyone just working as they normally would right now. They're just wearing headsets because that's how you need to communicate. Just replace the phones. People are looking in phones to them having headsets, and I think headsets will be replaced with things like augmented reality when that gets good enough, or things that will let you perceive the real world but enhance it a little bit.
I don't really understand what you mean by they work with.
They were just people in like business suits or whatever, going around their day. They have jobs. They do their own thing. It wasn't there for very long, and there were kids running around in the street with virtual headsets on. They were like playing a game. They were in the.
That seems kind of dangerous. If you ask me. Like,
Yeah.
I feel like no matter how much fun you have in that world, if in this world you don't care about yourself, like, and then your body will still age, it will deteriorate if you don't move around, and in the end, by let's say somebody like you die of diabetes or you die because of heart related diseases at the age of 30. Oh wow! Look at that. You have 30 years to enjoy your life in the virtual world. Well, in reality, if you were living in the real world, you could have at least another 30, 40, 50 years left, right?
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, it's like we said, it's a double-edged sword. People can abuse it. People can go overboard with anything, but then there's also a lot of benefits to it. I'm not sure. I don't see a way for everyone to give them all the benefits without giving them any of the downsides. I don't know how we would go about that.
Yeah, I really don't know how things are gonna be in the future, and I guess we just have to kind of wait and find out, right?
Yeah, I mean, I always find it super interesting, especially when I talk to people, and they say, "Oh, I want to do this," or they do something that I find either really interesting, like really inspiring, or something that I find really bad, like the way they're acting is really self-destructive. I'd be really interested if I could just, for a quick moment, jump 10 years or 20 years later to see how that actually ended up doing for them, or how their outcome was based on their actions today.
Yeah.
And you have to wait, but then you don't get to learn from that yourself.
Yeah, like I guess you probably can draw parallel. Like if you're curious about someone's like, oh, he's, I don't know, let's just say he's doing some drugs, and I guess you can look back at like a person from 1980s starting to do some drugs, and what happens to them now. Well, depending on how intense he is with his substance abuse, right? That you can just like, oh, is he dead in a ditch somewhere in rural America, or recovered and living a life as a retired, I don't know, businessman or something like that, right?
Yeah.
You can probably draw.
I mean, they're probably
parallels.
not. It's the problem is that everything's changing so quickly right now.
Yeah.
That even if you're looking at someone from the past, there's no indication that that's what the future is going to be like. Because majority of human life, the changes were so slow that over a generation or two, everything was basically identical.
Well, like still, like even if it's changing so fast, you still can refer to, I don't know, a past example and to like narrow down how much, what you can expect of the person you're like actually putting your interest in, right? And it's similar to how, like, I don't know, like it was like Chinese culture would have lots and lots of books written from, I don't know, 1,500 years ago by Confucius and his disciples, right?
Yeah,
and we're still like his ideas and his ideas and teachings are still very much applicable today.
Yeah.
Right. And
I mean,
like,
I'm not saying that we shouldn't look to the past, and there's lots of insight to have from looking at your history, because like the people say, if you don't learn from history, you're doomed to repeat it.
yeah.
I'm just saying that the specifics of what you necessarily need to be doing are not always gonna be the same. Like there's the things about the natural human experience, your love for someone, your aging, growing up, eating, drinking, sleeping, all that stuff. That's always gonna be there. That's no matter when you look at it, it's always gonna be there. But things like what jobs are good, like back in the day, if you worked as a farmer, or you worked as a person in the harbor loading cargo onto ships, that would have seen as a very good job. That's a job that pays well. Then today, it's the bottom of the barrel kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then farmers are actually adapting to this really well. You have farmers incorporating a lot more technology. And then you also have corporations kind of taking advantage of that. So a story I saw recently, ironically on Reddit, was that some farmers have this tractor.
Yeah.
I don't remember what the company was, but this company had a tractor that's locked to their software.
Yeah.
So that it wouldn't work if you try to fix it yourself. You'd have to go to the actual company mechanic store or whatever, and they'll fix it for you. And so farmers were basically renting out tractors they already bought. And then to go around that, however, farmers end up downloading a firmware from Ukraine for the tractor, and then updating the tractor with that firmware so they can fix it themselves.
Yeah.
So it was really interesting to me that they had to hack their own tractor, get it to work a certain way.
Yeah, like I don't really have anything to say about that, but I guess just technology is changing everything changing every aspect of our society, right?
Yeah. Have you heard of the right to repair movement?
Sorry?
Right to repair.
No.
So, right to repair just basically means if you buy a phone, or if you buy a car, if you buy a house even, you have the right to fix it yourself, to be able to say if your screen cracks, you want to replace the screen, you have the right to do so, and you can fix it yourself, and it wouldn't be illegal. And the company would have to be able to sell you parts to fix your screen, or even allow other people to sell you parts to fix your screen. And that there was a bill being passed that was trying to get passed here in Canada that got shut down because tech companies, I believe, lobbied against it.
Yeah, I stuff with like fixing houses, aren't those already allowed? Like,
yeah. I mean, it's an extreme example. I'm just saying, so when you need specialized parts or something to fix it, it's very hard to get, and sometimes they would say, "Oh, you're damaging it or something. You're diluting our brand." It could make it illegal. There's no right in the law to be able to fix it yourself. That's something they're trying to pass.
I don't know what I feel about this. I feel like it's a bit like what you said about companies saying that you're diluting our brand. So like, let's say you try to fix your iPhone.
Yeah.
Your screen protector broke. You bought someone from you brought apart and you put it on the iPhone itself.
Yeah.
And you drop it, and like you drop the phone again, the screen protector. Like let's say it breaks and something pierces the screen, so the phone's totally toast now. Do you blame it on Apple or yourself?
No,
Was the products like the quality of the product?
Yeah.
I mean, like not you dropping the phone. That's definitely your fault.
Yeah.
But
That the phone broke.
yeah.
No, so like say if for example, and like Apple does this, if you buy a home button to replace your home button because it got scratched or broke or whatever, it's not gonna work unless it's certified by Apple that it should work with your board, and like or like say if you replace the screen, the screen would have like a certain ID saying, "Oh, this is not the original screen. The phone is locked. Sorry, you can't use this phone anymore."
Really?
Yeah, that's not in place right now, but that's like this type of stuff that would be allowed without a right to repair movement.
I really don't know how I feel about that. I feel like because I've never been a really tech savvy kind of person, but like, let's say it's like about I don't know fixing a tool, a hand drill or something like that. If that was the case, then I'll feel pretty offended. Yeah, I guess you kind of have to be careful where you go with the movement, I guess, because like companies they do have to protect themselves, and if everything is just like you can customize everything, then you kind of like there's no need for brands, right? Like
I mean, it becomes a commodity the same way a lot of computers and stuff. When you buy a computer, it's basically a commodity. The brand doesn't matter too much. It's all the insides are basically identical. They're equivalent to off-the-shelf parts, or they are off-the-shelf parts, just been assembled and sold to you. So that's why some computer companies are struggling a little bit to differentiate themselves. And on the flip side, you have phones that they're highly specialized. You can't customize it by yourself. And then you have companies who are making tons of money, like Apple. And I'm not hating on Apple or anything. It's just that they're a big company that fit a lot of these examples. Like I think they're doing a lot of things really well. Like they're handling privacy really well. Their ecosystem is working really well together, and it's for a lot of things it's a better user experience. But then for some other things it's not, and that's the compromise. So it's a tough question for sure. And like playing devil's advocate, it's say with a car, if you fix a car yourself, then you end up in an accident because you fixed the car, then who's to blame? Is it And I think that's the thing companies are trying to get away from.
Like I said, I really don't know how I feel about this, but I do feel like you shouldn't have like the one thing I know for sure about like this whole situation is I feel like that you shouldn't need to bring it to like an Apple specific store to have it fixed. Like you can like if you bring it to a repair shop, any repair shop, like you should be able to get it fixed instead of like being like dictated by brand and all, because and that was I feel like you kind of get rid of a bit of the toxic competition between like Apple and Android, like if you let them mix a bit. And like,
I mean it's better for the consumers for sure, but then it's also worse for the companies.
But the thing is, if the companies continue to be selfish, they lose consumers then, etc. Right? Like I have no idea how a company like Apple stays afloat. Their phones are way like I think they're way too overpriced for their performance. Like I feel like an Apple phone, 50% of the money you pay for is for that logo on the back. I'm pretty sure Apple phones are worth like close to an 8, like to actually build it. Just the parts and the labor and stuff is like an 1/8 of what you actually pay, or even less. Like exactly. And I feel like I don't know if it's like Samsung, the other Android like companies that use Android are kind of like stepping up to match Apple with this kind of
Yeah, I
like
mean,
weight like
they're
inflating their product and all.
some companies like Samsung definitely are raising their price to
Yeah.
be competitive with Apple. Not just because they want to make more profit, because that's also the case.
Yeah.
But think of it this way: as a consumer, you're looking at two phones. You don't know. You're not too tech savvy. You don't know too much about the specs. You haven't seen reviews on it or anything, and you're like, oh, this phone looks the same ish as that phone, but this one's more expensive. So this one must be better because it's more expensive. So because a lot of people correlate higher price with higher quality.
Yeah.
Like if you buy a really expensive car, you expect it to perform a lot better, to be a lot faster, so on and so forth, to be a lot more comfortable. So other companies have to match the price so that, oh, they're the same price.
Yeah.
I'll just pick this one, or I'll just pick this one. So yeah.
I guess since Apple's kind of the industry leader in
Yeah.
the phone making business, they kind of get to dictate how the market goes, right?
Yeah. I mean, it is plateauing though, the sales of phones. Like how often people are refreshing their phones, buying new phones. That rate is going down.
Yeah.
Like
Okay.
year over year, sales of phones are going down. They're not growing anymore. So I imagine they're either gonna plateau or even keep declining for the next while.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's good.
Yeah, until either a big innovation happens that makes phones a lot better, or like just some new product altogether. Because right now, like year over year, phones don't get that much better anymore. They used to get way better. Now they don't get too much
I
better.
remember it was like iPhone, I think 4 to 6. There was there were huge jumps in performance and screen size and such, and I remember iPhone 4 had a screen like this big, and by iPhone 6 it was like almost double the size. If I recall correctly. And I feel like situations like that also kind of apply to like video games and such, like because the AAA title all are like $80 and stuff.
Yeah.
And
I mean, it's
like the market is just the same, like in a lot of the industries. I feel.
Yeah, it's where I feel like in terms of technological discoveries that are like groundbreaking, we are plateauing a little bit because like everything used to change and like improve so dramatically that now we're just at a standstill of what tools we have.
Yeah.
So like processors, CPUs can't get any smaller or like too much smaller than they are right now.
Yeah.
So therefore they can't get too much faster. That just means that we are now stuck with these tools for the next little while, unless something big happens, which might.
Quantum.
Quantum computing or something.
Yeah.
If I don't think that specifically is going to take off, but something like it might take off and like replace all the stuff we have right now. But now we have all the tools. It's just refining what you can use them for and improving on what we can build with them. It's like right now we have the best hammer that we ever had in the entire history of humanity. What do we build with it, basically? Okay. So we've been actually talking for almost an hour and a half now.
Yeah.
So I hopefully this was enjoyable for you. I hope you were able to learn a little bit. I definitely found this very insightful and interesting. And thanks for coming.
Yeah, thank you. It's been a very interesting experience, and I'm excited to see how this podcast turns out.
Okay.
All right,
Thank you.
Thank you.